right, guys, we are back. This is K-Talk Radio, 1640 AM. You are listening to the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. I am your host, Yoshi Shiraki. Today, we're discussing flipping houses, and it's time for the Nightmare Story Time and the lesson that can be learned. You know, whenever I have a guest, if you've ever listened to any of the previous shows, we have the Nightmare Story segment. And the reason we have the Nightmare Story segment is because it's better to learn from somebody else's mistakes than our own. And if you've been in real estate long enough, if you've been fixing and flipping houses, buying rental properties long enough, you will have your own nightmare story. And all the guests that I've had on my show are seasoned investors, and so they all have multiple nightmare stories, as do I. And the reason I like asking the nightmare story, obviously, is because if I can learn a lesson from somebody else's mistake, then hopefully that will prevent me from making that mistake in the future. So I'm going to start off by talking about this particular home that we ended up having a pretty good nightmare on. Thankfully, just to get this out right away, thankfully we still were profitable, but not that much. I'll get to that at the end of the story. So I found this particular property one day. I had gone to look at a particular home. I was checking up on a renovation project and was driving through the neighborhood basically to go home or go back to the office. And while I was driving out of the neighborhood, I happened to see a vacant property. Now, this is a great way to find good opportunities. For those of you who are asking, yeah, you see these people on the show flipping houses, but how do you find these deals? Well, it's a great question. One way is finding vacant properties. So you can tell they're vacant because either the lawn's overgrown or there might be multiple newspapers on the driveway that no one's picked up, or if it's the winter time, the snow hasn't been shoveled, or there's a couple boards on the windows. You know, somebody owns the home and someone threw a rock through the window and they don't want to fix it because nobody's living there, so they just put a board on the window. There's all sorts of indicators that a home is vacant. And in this particular one, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there were a couple notices on the door from the county, and there was a board on one of the windows. And I believe the property had... I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's been a while. The notices were, basically informing them of a fine due to the yard and all of that good stuff. So I pulled over the property as I was driving out, wrote down the address, and thought, oh, here's a vacant property. I'm going to research who owns this and reach out to them to see if they want to sell it, because they obviously aren't using it. It's sitting there vacant. Now, properties can be vacant for different reasons. One, maybe it's a second home. Maybe the owner lives in California and they have a home here in Utah for the winter to come ski. Those could be vacant, but they're probably going to be in decent condition. They're probably not going to have a board on the window and notices on the front door and all that good stuff. This one was not that case at all. So what I did is basically wrote down the address, and what you can do is you go home or to your office, to your computer, and you go to the county's assessor's website, right? So this house was in Salt Lake County. So if you don't know what that website is, Google Salt Lake County Assessor's website or Utah County's assessor website. Whatever county you're in, Google the assessor website, that county and the assessor's website. Then there's a place in there that you could do a property search for an address, and that's exactly what I did. I typed in the address and I hit search, and then what it does is it tells you who owns the home. Right? And so now you know who owns it. It doesn't give you a phone number, though. So you can't call them. But what it does is it does give you a mailing address of the individual who owns the home. So basically from there, I started mailing the individual a letter asking if they wanted to sell the property. And they ended up, I think it was the second letter. I sent like 2 letters over, I think I sent one a quarter. So every 3 months I had sent them a letter. So by the second letter, they actually were very interested in selling it. They just didn't get around to doing it the first time when I sent them the first letter. And they called me back and they communicated with me. Yeah, we've got that home. It's sat there vacant forever. It was actually another real estate investor who owned the home. And he says, yeah, I'm definitely not interested in having it anymore. I thought I'd fix it up one day, but I never did. And so, yes, you can have the house. So basically, purchased the home from that individual and was super excited. But here was the catch. He did not have a key to the house. He purchased this home, I think through an auction, never got a key. The doors, he says, you're going to have to look through the windows to see what you can see. The door is locked, and I prefer you don't kick down the door because then I won't be able to close the door back. So if you buy it, you're going to have to buy it sight unseen. So we did our calculations. We put in, a little safety net, because those are, I buy a lot of houses sight unseen, believe it or not. And it didn't take long to learn that I need to put in a little bit of a safety net, a little extra cushion, or say, in my profit margin when I am buying a house sight unseen, because you obviously can't see a lot when you don't get to see the house. When you don't go inside, you're there's a lot of risk into what you could potentially be finding yourself getting involved in. So basically, I always typically will tell the sellers, listen, I might be able to pay you significantly more for the home if you let me go inside and take a peek at what I'm buying. But if you don't, then I have to cover my risk, and I'm going to have to offer you a little bit less because I need to, basically have a safety net. And I give the sellers the option. You can let me in and let me see what the house looks like, and if it's in better condition, then I can give you a better offer. If not, this is what my offer is. This is my sight unseen offer. Of course, I have no idea what my seen offer is until I see it. But if you want something better than the sight unseen offer, let's see if we can get in. In this particular case, the seller's like, well, you can't. There's just no way to get in. I have no keys. I can't let you in even if I wanted to. We'd have to break in or call a locksmith. I don't want to pay for all that stuff. So I was like, okay. I offered to pay for the locksmith, and I don't remember exactly what happened, but I ended up buying it sight unseen. The sight unseen price was good enough for the individual. So purchased the home, and actually I was pleasantly surprised when I finally got in. Here's the first hiccup that we ran into, though. Got to the house, got there with my contractor. The day we closed, it was now my home. And I was with my contractor, and I said, all right, well, we had gone to Home Depot. We went actually and measured a front door, went to Home Depot, bought another front door because we were planning on kicking this door down. And it was probably going to break, and so we were ready to put in a new front door. And the current front door was battered up anyway, and so we wanted to put a new one anyway. So we're sitting at the front door, and we're talking, all right, who's going to kick it in, you or me? And we're laughing because, we were telling jokes, like having a bet, like if he could even kick the front door in. And then right then, the front door opens, and we're standing on the front porch, and the front door opens. We're like, holy cow. Well, there were two squatters inside sleeping. It was wintertime. And they heard us talking about kicking the front door in. So before they kicked it in, they hurried and just opened it, right? And so they basically apologized. They said, oh, are you guys the owners? And we're like, yeah, we're the owners. They're like, we're so sorry. We're just trying to stay warm. Can we, take our stuff? And I'd not even been in the house yet. And I was like, guys, you can take whatever you want. The front door's open. I can see a sofa. I can see just a bunch of garbage. I was like, you can take all your stuff. You can take all the stuff in the home if you want. Of course, they didn't. I wish they would have. But they took what they needed, and then we got in. So there was the first nightmare. The second was the next door neighbors were drug dealers. So we had a lot of riffraff that would come to the house every single day buying product, right? Buying drugs. And then the third nightmare is once the house is all done being remodeled, the house was beautiful and it showed beautifully. And we went under contract immediately, which was great. However, the person who went under contract with us started to do their due diligence, and while they were at the home, they noticed that the next door neighbor were drug dealers and the riffraff that was coming. And they canceled the contract. Well, here's where the nightmare really kicked in. We went under contract 6 times on that house. 6 times. And here's what saved us. The next door neighbors ended up getting foreclosed on. The bank evicted the drug dealers out of the next door neighbor's home, and that house became vacant. When that house became vacant, our 6th buyer who locked it under contract ended up closing and buying the house, right? And so When that sixth buyer purchased the home, that was massive relief, but we were projected to make $30,000 on that flip. Because of the price reductions we kept having to make due to the next door neighbor, we only made $6,000. Now, when the house next door became vacant due to the eviction, due to the bank foreclosing on those people, it would have been great to raise the price back up, but by that point, people had already seen the property get locked up 5 previous times. And so at that particular point, we just left the price to where it was, had that sixth buyer come in, offer full price, and at that particular point, we closed on it. Had the bank not foreclosed on our next door neighbors, then I still may own that home today and it might be a rental property. So the lesson that I learned is you cannot do due diligence just on the house itself that you're buying. You may need to do a little extra due diligence on the neighboring homes itself. And a lot of times I will look at the numbers of a home and determine if it mathematically makes sense. And in this case, it did. There was a $30,000 profit. But I didn't do the due diligence on the next door neighbor, which I do today. That was the lesson I learned, and I do that now. Every time I buy a house, I figure out who are the immediate neighbors and could that hurt my resale transaction. All right, guys, we're at the end of the show. If you've missed any part of this, definitely check out our website at utahhomesweethome.com. You can click on the social media links. These are all filmed and recorded. You can watch the entire show later. And I hope you guys all stay safe and healthy and enjoy the rest of the day.